Do you care about the royal family drama? Yeah, sort of. I mean, I don't really care for the drama, but I care for the crazy fucking shit that's been said. Like, the worst bit is that it came out that somebody who apparently is definitely not the Queen or Prince Philip brought up concern that Meg the baby might be too dark skinned and what impact that might have on the royal family. Like, holy shit.
My dad was a destiny.
Really? Holy fuck. In 2020 probably. You really thinking like that? Like, you say, they said that to Harry when he's married. Oh my god, like, it's just crazy to me that these people stand in this huge position of privilege in the country and they're like the worst fucking people. Like, there's literal pictures of Queen Elizabeth as a child being taught the fucking Nazi goose step in the garden by a great uncle or something. Fucking madness. Can you bring me up to speed on the royal family shit? It's basically just that Prince Harry and Meghan are giving an interview to Oprah. That's it. They wouldn't even give the baby titles before they saw it. Shithouses, mate. Fucking shithouses. They're monarchs. Their very existence is 18th century.
Yeah, boy.
It doesn't have to be like that, but yeah. The Swedish royal family is very progressive. I like them. Yeah, like the ones that truly, truly, truly are figureheads, it's not so bad. It's still dumb. How much power do they have? I'm an American, so I never really knew what their role was. Are they basically just celebrities? No, not really. The story is that they don't have any power. But they still do. They get paid like a very large stipend by the government. We pay for the renovation of their buildings that they own, like Buckingham Palace and stuff like that. Any laws that get passed need to be signed off from the Queen, which was made out to be just ceremonial, but it came out recently that any bills that directly affect the royal family, the Queen gets a chance to make amendments to those bills, or suggest amendments to those bills, which never go back to Parliament. So the Queen's lawyers will look at the bill, they'll make personal amendments.
Yeah, boy.
Then it goes back to the government, who sign it into law, or who basically approve it, and then it gets signed into law, all without Parliament ever getting a chance to look at it, which to me is massively bullshit. When you explain that those adjustments she makes are mostly to the family's financial benefit, yes, they are. Yeah. When I said that directly impacts them, typically mean their financial affairs. This is the thing that gets me, because you have these arguments with people and they're like, you can't just abolish the royal family and take all their property off them. It's a crime. It's their property. It's like, listen, guy. Last time this happened in France, we cut their fucking heads off. Didn't just take away their houses. You know, we cut their fucking heads off. So are you sitting here telling me that the French Revolution was unjustified legally and that fucking Maximilien Robespierre was a criminal who deserves to be, you know, tarnished, his reputation in history? No, bullshit. The French are heroes for doing that. Careful, they'll get you. No, I'm not saying that we should kill the royal family. Not even in a video game am I saying that. I'm saying that they should be abolished, though. Thoughts on the storming of the Capitol? Dangerous. I think when you look at the actual logs of what happened, it wasn't, from my understanding of it, I have to qualify that because I'm talking about American politics. My views of it are definitely painted by what I read in the media and the people that I listen to online. But it looks like it was the timing of getting the senators out of the room was only minutes before the rioters managed to get there, and there was clearly like a few that at least seemed prepared to take hostages. So I think that was a super serious attempt. I think it's basically a coup, to be honest. I feel like the right in America might want to say that it wasn't a coup and it was just some fucking memers doing some memes, but I think that's bullshit. And even if 90% of them were there just for the fucking lols, that doesn't mean that there wasn't the 10% that were there for real action and really trying to do some really bad things. And then there's like all the stuff about like, there was that one Republican senator who earlier on in the week had given like a tour to a bunch of random people. And then during the siege, she was like live tweeting Nancy Pelosi's location. Like really fucking sketch, if you ask me. It was absolutely prepared. Yep. The Capitol Chief of Police rejected military support in preparation, and now suddenly a third of the Capitol Police want to retire before any investigation happens. Wow. Not to mention that shit that's coming out about Trump's communications with the Proud Boys. Damn. Yeah, I think it's pretty scary, really. And I think it might have been Mitt Romney that said it the next day. But, you know, growing up, not so much in England, because obviously we've got a pretty strong and healthy democracy in England, but, you know, people all over the world look to the United States as like sort of a bastion of democracy and like free elections. And the fact that all of this was allowed to happen in the United States and came so close to disaster really, to me, highlights how far the USA has fallen in the last 4 years in terms of its global the world's perception of it. Hopefully that Biden can do some good things and sort of reverse some of that damage that's been done. But I don't think that the America that the world looked at in the 90s and even in the 2010s and 2000s is the same America that you have today. It's only the perception. I feel like the Republican officials and the base have been ready to do this for a decade. No, I don't agree with that. I don't really know, but that's not the vibe I get. You really think you have a strong and healthy democracy with the House of Lords and the Royals? I mean, it could be a lot worse, but still. Look, personally, I don't actually take as much issue with the House of Lords as you would expect. The monarchy, I do. House of Lords, not so much. But when I say a strong democracy, I mean it's not susceptible to the electoral system collapsing, to there being a coup, or, you know, a dissolution of fair elections, that kind of thing. I feel like the strongest democracy is in Germany, with the amount of work they do to teach what happened in history and why. Yeah, but Germany just hasn't got the duration to be considered one of the world's strongest democracies. I mean, it's only really been, like, even Germany itself was only a country in the late 1800s, if I remember correctly. And obviously since then, it's had a few teething problems. Things seem pretty good now, though, to be fair. What matters about duration? Well, because things take time to fall apart, you know. Whereas England has been a democracy for, centuries. To some extent, right? Like, not a proper modern democracy as we know today, but we've had democratic principles at the heart of our establishment for a long time now. What are your thoughts on Russia? I think Russia's pretty scary, man. Like, I feel like they're fighting the digital, I feel like they're fighting on the new front of global international warfare, while the rest of the West or the West are only just now realizing that there's a war to be fought there. Like, the whole Trump being elected and Brexit, they had fingers in those pies, and they're like hacking our systems, and they're doing things that I don't think anyone really realized was a threat until it's already kind of too late. It's not too late, but damage has already been done. Their goals of destabilizing the West. What is the name of that dude? Yeah, this is him, I think. Yeah, this guy. There's this guy is nuts. What's the Charlie Brooker bit about it? Let's watch this. Oh, this was good.
Against this sense that everything's sliding out of control, it's hard to know what to cling to or even what's going on. Here's a personal view from documentary filmmaker Adam Curtis, the man behind The Power of Nightmares and the forthcoming Bitter Lake, on the chaos that seems to be engulfing everything.
So much of the news this year has been hopeless, depressing, and above all, confusing. To which the only response is, oh dear. But what this film is going to suggest is that defeatist response has become a central part of a new system of political control. And to understand how this is happening, you have to look to Russia, and to a man called Vladislav Surkov, who is a hero of our time. Surkov is one of President Putin's advisors, and has helped him maintain his power for 15 years. But he has done it in a very new way.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
He came originally from the avant-garde art world, and those who have studied his career say that what Surkov has done is import ideas from conceptual art into the very heart of politics. His aim is to undermine people's perception of the world, so they never know what is really happening. Zherkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He sponsored all kinds of groups, from neo-Nazi skinheads to liberal human rights groups. He even backed parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Zherkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or fake. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused, a ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it's indefinable. Which is exactly what Zherkov is alleged to have done in the Ukraine this year. In typical fashion, as the war began, Zherkov published a short story about something he called non-linear war. A war where you never know what the enemy are really up to, or even who they are. The underlying aim, Zherkov says, is not to win the war, but to use the conflict to create a constant state of destabilized perception in order to manage and control. But maybe we have something similar emerging here in Britain. Everything we're told by journalists and politicians is confusing and contradictory. Of course, there is no Mr. Zherkov in charge, but it's an odd, non-linear world that plays into the hands of those in power. British troops have come home from Afghanistan, but nobody seems to know whether it was a victory or whether it was a defeat. Aging disc jockeys are prosecuted for crimes they committed decades ago, while practically no one in the City of London is prosecuted for the endless financial crimes that are being revealed there. In Syria, we are told that President Assad is the evil enemy, but then his enemies turn out to be even more evil than him. So we bomb them, and by doing that, we help keep Assad in power. But the real epicenter of this non-linear world is the economy. And the closest we have to our own shape-shifting, postmodern politician
Fucking George Osborne. Sorry to interrupt, but Jesus
is
Christ.
George Osborne. He tells us proudly that the economy is growing, but at the same time, wages are going down. He says he is cutting the deficit, but then it's revealed that the deficit is going up. But the dark heart of this shape-shifting world is quantitative easing. The government is insisting on taking billions of pounds out of the economy through its austerity programme. Yet at the very same time, it is pumping billions of pounds into the economy through quantitative easing. The equivalent of £24,000
Fuck off.
every pound in Britain. But it gets even more confusing, because the Bank of England have admitted that those billions of pounds have not gone where they are supposed to. A vast amount of the money has actually found its way into the hands of the wealthiest 5% in Britain. It has been described as the biggest transfer of wealth to the rich in recent documented history. It could be a huge scandal, comparable to the greedy oligarchs in Russia. A ruthless elite siphoning off billions of public money. But nobody seems to know. It sums up the strange mood of our time, where nothing really makes any coherent sense. We live with a constant vaudeville of contradictory stories that makes it impossible for any real opposition to emerge, because they can't counter it with a coherent narrative of their own. And it means that we as individuals become ever more powerless, unable to challenge anything, because we live in a state of confusion and uncertainty. To which the response is, oh dear. But that's what they want you to say.
So yeah, my views on Russia is that they might be weak economically compared to the West, but they are, I think, well ahead in the sort of new types of warfare. Like there's a book, I think it's called The History of Geopolitics or something like that, and it might even be History of Geopolitics. Russia. Is it called Foundations of Geopolitics? Yeah, here we go. The Foundations of Geopolitics. Its influence in the military, police, foreign policy, uses a textbook of the Russian military. Klokotov stated that the future book would serve as a mighty ideological foundation for preparing a new military command. And it talks about like destabilizing the West through promoting racial division in the United States. Look here, the United Kingdom, merely described as an extraterritorial floating base of the United States, should be cut off from Europe. Like Brexit, Donald Trump, like the Black Lives Matter, like not Black Lives Matter, but the what's the right way of putting it? Like the division between white and black in America and the sort of rising of racial tensions in the US are all things that are talked about in this book as like key goals for Russia to gain their power. So I really think that they've been working on this kind of like crazy stuff for a while now, and we're only starting to now cut onto it. I think China is scary. Yeah, China are definitely scary as well, but I don't think that... Well, no, I take it back, actually. I was going to say that they don't really have as many foreign military goals as the Russia, but they do, actually, so... China is so successful with propaganda, even abroad in Western countries. Yeah. Russian here. Although I don't really like Putin, he was pro-West in the early 2000s, but repeatedly got the short end of the stick from him, so his policy is sort of justified. Interesting. His policy is sort of justified. I mean... It's justified to be anti-West, perhaps, and I sort of sympathize with Russia in being backed into a corner by the expansion of NATO towards the Ukraine, and why Russia may feel like they have to act now in order to avoid NATO surrounding them and basically like sanctioning them into oblivion. But I don't know, like interfering in other elections
My dad was a destiny.
and stuff like that. That's stuff that was going on in the Cold War that I thought we were past. And I would like to think that I don't think Western countries are involved in that kind of thing right now. But I could be wrong.